Welcome to the HerpCore History podcast, presented to you by Little Shop of Horrors. Feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media platforms for any of your feeder needs. All right, let's go ahead and get into this episode. All right, today I'm joined by Bob Vu. How are you doing?
I am good.
Excellent. Just got done taking care of a whole bunch of rats, and now I get to come home and do this, the fun part.
The glorious side of breeding reptiles, rodents.
Yes. Someone's got to do it, and so I do that. But excellent. So, where'd you grow up at?
So kind of a little bit all over the place. My family came to the United States in 1993, and then we grew up in Orlando. So we first came to America and somehow landed in Orlando, Florida. Grew up there inside the city, and in 2001, we moved to Georgia. My parents bought a chicken farm, and so grew up in South Georgia most of my life. And then after my parents retired and left Georgia, it was just kind of like up to us, like at that point, what we want to do and where we want to go. I had graduated college in 2011 and decided I'm just going to go off on my own. So it was me, my wife. When I met her, we moved in together, and we moved kind of all over South and Central Georgia. For her school and then for my work. We kind of just bounced around a little bit here and there every year or two. And then we've gotten up here into McDonough, Georgia. This is like right outside of Atlanta. We moved here about 5 years ago, and we love it here. So we've been, looks to be semi-permanent.
Cool. It's always cool to find your spot where you feel like that's home. So that's good to hear that. Well, we covered a lot of ground there, but so, and you said when you guys first came to Orlando, and that was 1993. How old were you at that point?
I was 4. So I was born in 89, and Vietnam at the time when my parents were trying to leave Vietnam. So they tried to leave multiple times. So the first time they tried to escape, and again, we say escape because it's a communist country and it was getting pretty bad in the 80s. Government would just come in and seize your property and all that. So my parents were trying to escape for years and actually got caught twice trying to escape the country. My grandparents, had some money, so they were able to like get my parents out and stuff like that. And so one last attempt was my two oldest sisters, we were put on a raft and along with my uncle and 3 other aunts, and they actually escaped Vietnam and got to the Philippines. That was in 1986 or 87. One of those, I think it's in 86. And so they sent my sister to the Philippines. And back in those days, you literally, once you send your kids off, you don't know if they made it. There's no calling, there's no email, so like check to see if they're alive. So my parents just assumed both of my sisters were gone, so they ended up having 2 more kids, which will be me and my youngest sister. So there's 5 of us total. And later on, my uncle was able, once they got to America, 2 years later, they were able to get news back to Vietnam that my sisters are still alive and everyone's fine. When we got very lucky in 1993. My second oldest sister, Swan, wrote an essay in an essay writing competition. Wrote an essay about our family situation, and actually President Bill Clinton was able to grant us refuge. So the rest of our family was able to move over here and reunite in 93.
Wow. What are the chances? I mean, and so I'm ignorant to the situation, and I mean, I guess the space and the distance. How far was the boat raft trip that or boat that your family had to take, or your sisters?
So it's a 1 month on a boat to get from
Jeez.
Vietnam to the Philippines. And like hearing the stories, it's pretty wild because a lot of people die during the trip. You're not taking like a cruise ship or even a big ship. You're taking literally a boat.
Yes.
and as much food and water as you can carry, and hope that you make it there, and then once you get to the Philippines, it's not like, oh, you're safe. And the reason the Philippines is because it's semi close, but then also because of the Catholic Church was in the Philippines, and they're willing to take people in that are basically from war torn countries like ours. So because of that, my sisters were taken in by the Catholic Church, and later on, as things cleared, they made it their way from Philippines to the U.S. We have a great uncle that came to the U.S. in the '70s before all of us, and kind of set up here. He actually is like the OG of our family. So anyone that comes over to the U.S. in the '90s would go work with him at the Marriott Hotel. So my dad worked as a housekeeper at the Marriott Hotel when he first came to America, and my mom worked in a sewing factory. And it's so insane to hear their stories, because I'm at the age now that my parents made the decision to let my sisters leave Vietnam to come to America. And so I'm 36 now, and I couldn't even imagine making that type of decision, or to even leave a country and go to another country. Like my parents, for them to leave Vietnam and go to America where they don't speak the language, they have no money, they have no jobs lined up, they have nowhere to live. So basically, we came over here. Luckily, our great uncle had a house. There was like 15 or 16 of us living in that house at the time. Back then, there was no like regulation. They didn't come in. It was like, whoa, you have too many kids in one room. There was like six of us in one room. We just had bunk beds everywhere. And then everybody just worked where my great uncle worked, which is the Marriott Hotel. And my dad worked there for 2 years. And then later on, as my parents learned a little bit more English and how the systems work over here. Later on, my dad went and got his GED. My mom went and started going to nail school and stuff like that. And then we actually moved out on our own into government housing area. And I'll be honest, man, when you're that poor, you don't actually know you're poor. And it was a lot of fun back then. I'll be honestly, we were happy kids because everyone around you is also so poor. So no one knows. And we had a good time, man. I had a great childhood, in my opinion, even though we were very poor growing up. In my opinion, my parents did everything they could, and I still had a great childhood, and I'm very thankful for government assisted programs like food stamps, housing, and Toys for Tots. Honestly, Toys for Tots is what got me started in my love for Pokemon and all of this stuff, because as a parent, for my dad to admit that he doesn't have any money to get any of us Christmas presents, and to go out there and for them to give us my first Pokemon cards and a binder, and that kind of started my whole collection process.
Interesting. Well, and two, just to speak about your parents for a moment, and your sisters also. What brave people to do that, right? And to just make that jump again. You're saying being that same age and kind of thinking about putting yourself in their shoes and making those decisions. You know, that's it's crazy. It's crazy to fathom doing that, and how brave they were to make that happen, and then obviously be successful in it, and raise wonderful kids.
Right. It's like sometimes, like, I've had people tell me, "Oh, you're so brave starting your own business and doing this and this and this," and I'm like, my parents sent a 6 and an 8-year-old daughters to on a boat to America and said, hopefully they make it. Here's, $50 or whatever they had, and hopefully they make it. To make that type of decision, and then for them to come to America, learn the language, and learn, business and all that, and then later on, buy their own farms. And my dad retired, let me see, my dad retired almost 10 years ago. He literally is the American dream, in my opinion. He's the literal American dream, coming to America, competing with fellow Americans, and becoming successful, and get the retirement and raise kids to go through college. We were very blessed at the time. All five of us graduated high school, and in our state in Georgia, if you graduate with a 3.0 or better GPA, you're basically given so much money to go to school. any in-state school. So we were all able to go to college for free. We were all able to get so many scholarships, 'cause we signed up. I'll be honest, when I was my senior year of high school, I signed up for every single scholarship that was available to me. Okay, because it's free, right? It's free to sign up. Why not? So I signed up for every freaking scholarship,
Yeah.
and I had this process where if the scholarship requires an essay, I always look for the ones with the most generic type of essays, and I write one essay and submit it to all of them. And that's how I actually was able to buy my first ball pythons and leopard geckos with using scholarship money, because I lived at home with my parents while I was going to college. So all that scholarship money was just, in my opinion, was just like free money in my pocket. So I'm able to invest it. I went and bought my first pastel ball python male in Daytona. I bought some leopard geckos that year, and anytime new semester come, I get new scholarship check, I would go and buy new snakes.
Interesting. And so one thing that you brought up was that an interest in Pokemon cards and collecting. Did that lead to your interest in reptiles, and where did that come from, and how did that start to grow in you?
Sometimes I draw a little parallel to it. I don't think it's quite the same thing. I think all of us, especially like just reptile keepers, just have it in us that innately we just want to keep things. We want to collect things. Um, I would never compare live animals to like collecting Pokemon cards, but we all have that itch that want to collect. And with Pokemon cards, when I was growing up, I was able to open new packs and trade and go hustle some other kids and go battle and do all these things. And with reptiles, it was a little bit different, because with reptiles, I've collected reptiles since I was a kid. And before we even knew what herping was, right? Back in the day, there was no term for it for us. I was just a weird kid with a golf club that looks like a hook that I made, and I wore a book bag, and I just because we have 100 acres of land when we moved to Georgia on a farm, and I was just going out there flipping logs, looking under hay bales for snakes. And back in the day, it was easy, man. I found so many snakes when I was younger, and no phone, no camera, nothing. You just go out there and look at them, play with them a little bit, and then release them back. Today in today's world, man, if you find a snake, it's the phone comes out immediately. I almost feel like some of these herpers that are newer. Sometimes I just like to go in the woods and I don't bring my phone just so I can appreciate it a little bit more. Well, yeah, I think my fascination with reptiles has always been ever since I was a child, just going out into the woods and getting to do that. And now being able to do this for a living and getting to, start new projects, breed new species, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. No, how cool. And so you had an interest in field herping as a young man, and you had access to 100 acres. I mean, what a great playground to do that, right? And facilitate that. And so what were your early herping experiences like, and do any stand out to you?
I'll be honest. I've told this to my wife. I'm not even sure how I'm alive, because when I was younger, my parents would just let me do anything. They're just like, just go try it, and if it fails, oh well. And I'm just out there with a hook, and I used to keep timber rattlesnakes in my. I have like a study room, and I would have enclosures with timber rattlesnakes that I catch, and I would just keep them in there. And because we live on a chicken farm, I just chuck little chickens in there, and they always eat. And timbers were some of my favorite animals to keep back in the day, because I had the sheriff's department come out one year actually to let me know that I have to release all the corn snakes I've found. In the state of Georgia, you're not allowed to keep any native non-venomous snakes, but they couldn't do anything about the timbers I was keeping, because in Georgia, you can keep any native venomous snake. And let me explain, it's because of the rattlesnake roundups we have here. So they have the
Mm.
rattlesnake roundup, so they have to allow people to keep the venomous snakes. And so that's actually, I've been an advocate trying to push towards that ban. I would actually like to see them also protect the venomous species, because a lot of people go out there and it's perfectly legal to kill the venomous species in Georgia. You can go and kill a diamondback, even though they are now protected. I haven't seen a diamondback, and you don't see them as often anymore. But a corn snake is protected. All these other species are protected, even though people still kill them. But yeah, when I was a child, I would just go out there and collect timbers and all these other species that are around the farm. And probably my best catch, as a child anyways, was a pair of breeding king snakes, and I flipped them and they were already locked up. So I was like, screw it, I just took them home, and then they ended up laying eggs. The female ended up laying eggs later on, and I had them hatch.
Oh
um,
wow.
so that was really cool, and it kind of started my whole fascination. Like, I would find like skink eggs, 5 line skinks. You flip a log, you find some eggs, I take them home. And some of these species are so easy to hatch. You literally just put them in a box of damp paper towel, and they're going to hatch at room temp. So that kind of got me started, pretty early on. And I do feel very fortunate that I had such easygoing parents, or very encouraging parents, that just allowed me to start these projects or do random things, like just go in the woods by myself, and then just be home before sundown.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for an Asian family, I'll tell you, this is not common. I was the weird Asian one that kept reptiles, and did all of that. Like, I would ask my dad, "Hey, can I build a rat rack? I've seen it on online. I have the schematics." Back in the day, we would use like king snake forums and fauna classified forums and iHerp and all that. So I was like, "Hey, I found the schematics for this rat rack. Can you help me with it?" And he was like, "Why do you want to build a rat rack?" I'm like, "Well, because I'm spending $20 a week right now buying rats. I can just breed my own." And he was like, "Yeah, it's not a bad idea." So he ended up letting me build rat racks and gecko racks, and I ended up paying my through my way through college. Buying all my books and stuff, on top of my scholarship money, with breeding leopard geckos. I bred the heck out of some leopard geckos when I started. So I made a lot of money doing that while I was in college.
Well, I love it. I love it. And it's cool to hear, anytime someone has supportive parents. I feel like there's always kind of a mix there, of some people that had them, some people that didn't. But regardless of any other aspects, it's just so cool to hear family investing in that interest. And so you were saying your family was running a chicken farm at that point when
Right.
you had the 100 acre. So do you think that played a factor in your parents' understanding of your interest in the business of reptiles and keeping them, and that there
No, because
was
there wasn't really an industry back then. Back then, it was like, especially in ball pythons, they were like the top 20 guys that were making money. I mean, you're talking about 2008, 2009 range. Like, a few guys were making a ton of money, or the industry isn't like it is now. There was never a thought that I'm going to be breeding reptiles for a living or as a business in any sense. I was just breeding reptiles because it was cool, in my opinion, anyways. And my dad was just like, so what if he just breeds a few snakes? He'll get tired of it soon, eventually, and go back to doing school or whatever. And our deal with my parents, or with all my siblings, is that as long as we're in school, and as long as we all graduate college, they pretty much let us do whatever, man. And my brother has a degree in computer science and owns like 40 motorcycles, because that's always been his thing. And growing up, my parents let him buy all the motorcycles he wants. He took them all apart piece by piece, and then rebuilt them back together. And there's a yard full of just junk parts, but they just let us experiment and do all these weird stuff. And the farming aspect of it, my dad actually was half expecting me to take over the farm, because I did love the farm, and I did help him out on the farm, while I was in school. But I just didn't see myself as like a chicken farmer, and I saw how hard my parents had to work, and I was like, ball python's so much easier. So yeah, when my dad retired and asked me if I wanted to take over the chicken farm, I knew they made good money. We grew up so poor, but then watching my parents get to the point where they were making good money on the farm, and then for me to have to tell him I don't want to take it over, and for them to sell it and just go ahead and retire. Yeah, and at the time that when they retired, so they retired in 2016, 15 or 16, I was doing insurance. I was selling insurance, life insurance, and I was very good at it, by the way. I have a very strong sales background. And I was a director for an insurance company. So I told him, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna write this insurance thing out." So they sold the farm. I was still doing the insurance thing, and they were pretty proud of it because I was in a suit and tie every day, being a director. And after my third year as director, made good money. It wasn't the money or anything like that that made me leave. But my wife was like, "Why do you even go in the office still? Like you hate it, and you love the reptiles so much. Why not pursue the reptile thing?" And I'm very glad she mentioned that to me. But at the time, it's so daunting that to pursue breeding reptiles full time. And I'm the sole breadwinner, if you will, because she was in school, nursing school at the time. So there's one income that doing insurance, and for me to quit my job and do in as reptiles full time was crazy. But we did it in 2016. I called my boss and I said, "Hey, um, this week's gonna be my last week as director. I just want to let you know and um, prepare. Like let whatever you need me to do to train the next director or whatever, I'll do it. But officially turning in my notice, and I'm gonna pursue this reptile thing full time." And my boss literally said, "Cool, no problem. Call me in 6 months when you're ready to come back, when this reptile thing doesn't work out." So that's been 10 years. So this is our 10th year celebrating breeding reptiles full time.
How cool! How cool is that? And so something jumping back in time again a little bit. You were talking about when you ran into those pair of king snakes locked up and you ended up getting eggs and you said you hatched the eggs?
Yeah. So king snakes or any colubrids around, like any southeast colubrids. Um, Once the female lays the eggs, I feed them two chickens and two little chicks. I let them go, toss them out. They're gone, and then the eggs are just hatch at room temp. So it's like so simple. And I was very lucky. I had a professor in. Actually, I never took any of his classes. He was a herpetology professor at my school, and I signed up for one of his classes, and he told me to go ahead and drop the class because it doesn't seem like I'm in it for the education side. I just want to go on the field trips. And he was correct. I just want to go herping with them and do all that. But he mentored me throughout the few years I was there. I hatched leopard geckos, gargoyle geckos, five line skinks, king snakes, um, and what other species have I hatched with him helping? I think that's it with him. Like I just messaged him. I'm like, "Hey, I have this clutch. What do I need to do?" And at the time, I didn't research anything. I was a terrible reptile keeper. I would just pair stuff or get eggs and then call him afterwards. Um, well, he was always there. That's Dr. Bob Harrington. He passed away in 2000 and I believe 19 or 20.
Gotcha. And so was that one of your first mentors and someone that could relate with you in the hobby, or had you run into peers or anyone else before that?
I'd say my first mentor that really pushed me was Albie Scholl from Albie's Too Cool Reptiles. He's known for like breeding geckos back in the early 2000s. And what I did was I drove to Atlanta with my brother when I was 16. And then we just Googled reptile stores near us. And it showed up Albie's Too Cool Reptiles. So we put in MapQuest, and then we drive to this guy's house, and Albie's Too Cool Reptiles. It just ended up being his house. We knock on the door, and Albie must be in his 50s at the time. He opens the door, he looks out, and he goes, "Is it just you two?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're here to see reptiles." And hindsight, super creepy. He looks out like to see like if there's anybody else with us, and then he goes, "All right, come on in." So it's just like a 16, just two of us walk in this guy's house, and he shows me a piebald ball python, a yellow belly, a few mutations I've never seen before. And at the time, let me see, this would have been 2006. For him to show me a piebald, I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, "Whoa, what's wrong with the snake?" And it's like, "Why is it white?" And then what's wrong with it? So he's showing me all these mutations, and I ended up buying a leopard gecko from him that day. I bought a male Max Snow leopard gecko for $75. And he was trying to explain to me genetics. He's like, "Oh, if you breed this male to your leopard gecko you have at home, you'll make some max snows, and then you breed them back. Now you got super snows, and I'm like, my mind is blown at this point. You know, I've just taken some biology classes. I'm like, oh yeah, genetics, cool. And so I would text him, periodically, and email him, and he would walk me through like building an incubator. My first incubator that he actually walked me through building was a cooler, a big one of those big coolers from Walmart. I ended up using that incubator for like 6 years. And yeah, I'll be sure. And then now I see him. Actually, we celebrated his 70th birthday at my house 2 years ago.
How
Pretty
cool
cool.
is that? How cool is that? And how how interesting it is, right? When you think about the reptile, the stereotypical reptile person,
Hmm.
right? And then what it takes for that person to take you under their wing and kind of go, hey, this this is how to do this, and be interested in your growth in the hobby. And when you connect with those people, what a cool experience to have.
Yeah, I've been so fortunate that in this industry, so many guys have done that for me. Like when I meet these people, I want to tell people I'm not the most talented person in the world. It doesn't take a ton of talent to breed ball pythons, but I do have a gift, and my gift is somehow I'm just able to connect with these people and form these connections. I met one of my biggest mentors is Eugene Bassett, a longtime breeder down in Florida, and I visited him last week. I went to visit him last week, and we're talking about how long we've known each other. And for me, being in this industry for about almost I guess 20 years now, when I bought my I say investment animal, $75 leopard gecko, um, 20 years now, and I've met so many amazing people, and that all took me under their wing, and just mentored me and taught me all the right ways of doing things. And obviously, I've met crappy people in this industry too. It seems like a lot of people in this industry seem to focus on those crappy people. When I tell people, you meet 10 times more good people than you do the bad people. So just focus on the good people. Focus on like all the cool people you've met or all the good connections you've made. Don't dwell on that one guy that tried to scam you or stuff like that. And I've been so fortunate, to connect with guys like Justin Kabilka or Ralph Davis or Garrick Nemeyer, all these guys that are like OGs in our industry, and just been able to learn from all of them.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it is interesting, and it's it's kind of the whole idea of if there's a wedding, on one side of the venue, or wedding convention on one side of the venue, and there's the line for the snake show. Just walking up, I know my line, and
Oh yeah.
and I think that over the years, as someone else that was early on in my life in the hobby, where you're a couple years older than me, but I think we were kind of hitting those same, you see the hobby changing, and you see the influences coming in, and expanding and growing, and these different mutations and all these different things, where you start to see it kind of shift from a little bit more of an underground thing to it's still obscure, but it's not as obscure of a hobby.
Yeah, but now we have like a real industry, like we have companies dedicated, like literally whole companies dedicated to only building cages or only doing bedding, only doing feed, like for these animals. Like we're a legit industry, multi-billion-dollar industry, and we've both seen it, right? When we first got into the industry, what does your stereotypical reptile guy look like 20 years ago? It was Kevin McCurley, or it was, the guy with the ponytail, tattoos, face tats, and then ponytail. Again, not saying that those guys don't exist now, but if you look now on YouTube or social media, it's a lot of just regular, normal dudes that are into reptiles.
Yep.
And a lot of people when they meet me, they're like, "You're just like a regular guy," and I was like, "Yeah, like reptile people can be normal people too, you just happen to like reptiles." And if you drive into my neighborhood, you would never know there's a facility here. It's a very regular house. There's not a bunch of fish tanks in my front yard or anything like that. And that was the vision that we were going for when we formed our reptile show, the Southeast Reptile Expo. Is why when you tell people a reptile expo, what automatically comes to your mind? Let me just go ahead and ask you that. Like reptile expo.
What comes to my mind? I guess it depends on the show that I'm at, but yeah. I mean, there's a certain smell that I think of when I
Yeah,
think of going to a snake show.
yeah.
Might not always be bad. I think of roasted nuts, but but that's what I think of, and
And most of the time, it's urates and body odor.
yeah, yeah, and it's just a sea of people just like myself dressed in black,
Yeah.
and
So, do you think why? Like, is it because that perception is in the reptile industry? Because the first few reptile shows I ever went to was kind of grimy, and then I visited Daytona and your Tinleys and your super shows, and I'm like, why can't reptile shows be like high scale? Why can't we be like I've been to some of these knife shows, card shows, gem shows, and I'm picking ideas off some of these shows, and I'm like, why can't we be like taken more seriously as an industry? Why can't you go into a nice venue with AC and coffee and food vendors and like really upscale this a little bit? So we had this idea that if we formed a show that was higher scale, we book a nicer venue, you go in, it's like state of the art, it's pretty. You have nice people greeting you at the door that are dressed like they're supposed to be here, not just like carny looking people that are, just wearing a t-shirt with 4 holes in it. Like people that are well groomed to greet you. And this starts off this environment. And I've been asking a lot of attendees and even vendors for their feedback about the show. Is that when you travel to a show like this, where it's clean, it's not your typical reptile show or whatever, people are more willing to come in and buy from these vendors. They're more willing to invest their time, their money, and buy their kids a snake or gecko or whatever, because this industry now looks legit. There's legitimacy, there's professionalism when they look at this and they're going, wow, this is nice. And if my kid grows up to be one of these people, it's okay. But if I went into a show and it smells, every vendor looks like they're miserable. They look grimy. The animals look half dead, and all of that's going on. Why would you want your kids to get involved in this industry when it just looks like a swap meet every show? And trust, we've all been to those shows. You've been to enough shows. If you've been to enough shows, you've been to that show, that grimy kind of underground feeling show where it's like everything's kind of gross. Again, I'm not talking bad about any specific show, but we've all been to that type of show before,
yes, sir. Yeah.
and just thinking from a parent's perspective, like, would I want my kids to grow up and be part of this industry or not? Like, why would I want my kids to go frequent these reptile shows if it's just a bunch of guys that are miserable out here flipping snakes that they literally bought yesterday from some wholesaler? Or we can do a very good representation of our industry, the better side of the industries, these captive bred species and animals that are or responsibly sourced wild caught animals that have been quarantined, professional sellers, these guys that know what they're talking about, know what type of products, just stuff like that. And when you go into a professional environment like that, maybe it's not too bad that your kid is into reptiles. Maybe you're more willing to loosen up your pocketbook a little bit. And so I feel like that creates an environment where the vendors can do well. And so far, it's worked out pretty good for us. The first show, I'll be honest, was very nerve wracking because we spent so much money. And I'm like, is this going to pay off? Like, or is this just going to end up like any other show, and bring in like 1,000 people and then we end up in the negative? But no, the community really came together for us and react, and helped us out. Vendors promoted the show for us. We obviously promoted, but the vendors did their job, and it came out amazing. And I think we're building something special here. And I think this is how you help build the community, is through positive experiences. Even if you take your kid and you don't buy a reptile right away, at least you had a positive experience with it. And you can at least tell your friends that, oh my gosh, these reptile people are legit. Some of these people are bringing thousands of dollars of displays, and they're bringing, and they're very educated, and it's a whole industry. It's not just some guys that collected reptiles outside and are selling them on the table. So that's what we were going for.
Yeah. No, and that's interesting, and getting back to you and your interest in the hobby. You talk about, hey, you got your first animals that you look at as investment animals, and what were those animals that you were getting? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's another thing too, right? I think that's the coolest thing about this hobby. I think when you say that, there's this kind of knee jerk reaction that it's a negative to look at it that way. And I don't think that's the case at all. If it wasn't for industry, we wouldn't have what we have now, right? You hear the
Right.
stories of guys breaking down refrigerators, building their own caging systems, whatever it is. The resources that we have now are so cool and so readily available because of the business aspect of reptiles growing and becoming a legitimate thing. And so whether you want to sit here and hate on this species or that species, though, those were the species that championed this hobby, and now they are, some of them bring it up in a way of explaining, the Budweiser of reptiles, where you can go to soccer mom Sally, she's going to be able to point out what a ball python is and a bearded dragon.
Yeah, so when you're talking about the hate that the industry gets sometimes, because we do refer to these animals as investment vehicles sometimes, that doesn't mean we don't love the species. Just because I'm like, okay, I'm investing in this new breeder male or whatever, doesn't mean I'm looking at this animal going, okay, dude, if you don't breed, I'm throwing you in the freezer, type deal. Like literally, we still love these animals. That's why we do it. As I mentioned before, I was making really good money doing insurance. I mean, for anyone out there that's ever done insurance before, the money is good if you know what you're doing. And I did. I was a heck of a salesman because I'm very good with numbers. And my first year doing insurance, I did 100 grand in sales or in commission. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, let me go do reptiles because I can't do anything else. I just actually really love doing this. I wake up every morning. I check the incubator first thing as I wake up. But yeah, that knee jerk reaction when someone's like, "Oh, I'm investing," um, it makes it feel cheap. It cheapens the species a little bit. But again, like you mentioned, without ball, like let's just throw it out there, without the ball pythons, half of this industry wouldn't be where it is. Why did they develop rack systems and incubators and all these, reptichip and all this? A lot of it is ridden on the back of ball pythons, leopard geckos, and bearded dragons, the three most popular reptile species in the trade, well, now crested gecko. But yeah, with these species that everyone loves to hate on, because again, being a ball python breeder, I hear it all, man. I've heard it for years. We're breeding the most pansy of all the species, the easiest of all the species, but we are the gateway drug of reptiles, right? People go
Yes.
in, they buy their first reptile. It's usually a corn snake or a ball python. If you're buying a snake, then you start to really explore what you like. You get the first few easy reptiles, which is ball pythons and corns. Then you really start to explore, and you're like, wow, what about these colubrids, and what about these, rear fangs, and all these other species that are out there. And I do the same thing. That's why I have black-headed pythons, I have blood pythons, I have garter snakes, I have all these other species that I love. But ball pythons where the money is, and I know that, and it's where I can do the most. I can have the most impact. Just from me breeding ball pythons, we're able to donate over $100,000 to Toys for Tots over the last few years. I couldn't do that with my regular job. With breeding ball pythons, I was able to raise all this money for USARC. We've raised over $250,000 for USARC over the last few years with our auctions and everything like that. And I have a reptile relief fund. We started the reptile relief fund when the freeze happened in Texas a few years ago. We started this Facebook group where we would auction off animals and items and stuff to raise money for the victims of the Texas freeze. Like we had a lot of breeders lose animals or power and stuff like that, so we were able to send them money to buy generators and gas and fix up their house and fix up whatever else. And we raised $40,000 that year. Again, it's a small number in the grand scheme of things, but it's a large number when you're sending someone that's hurting $1,000 to help them pay for their gas bill. And we were able to carry that reptile relief fund all the way till this past year, where the hurricanes hit a lot of breeders, the hurricanes and government shutdown and all that. We were able to raise over $100,000 over the last 12 months for these breeders. So I'm very proud of what the species overall has been able to do, or help me raise money. And then overall, look at the conservation side of things. Ty Park from Iguanaland, the amount of money he's been able to generate to help conservation through his passion for reptiles. He owned pet shops for a long time back in the day, and then he was able to open Iguanaland, and using Iguanaland, he's able to raise so much money for conservation. So our industry is not just so much, oh, let me breed this animal and this animal, sell it and pocket some money. We're able to give back to the industry. We're able to give back to the people of the industry, and we're able to give back to the conservation of a lot of these species through these animals that we keep.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that's so interesting about the hobby, is that when you look at it as a hobby, I guess how to explain this. There's a breakdown of it being a hobby or it being a business, and however you look at it, whatever your passion is that revolves around reptiles, the way that culminates around the person, something that I've been talking a lot about lately, and the way I look at it is reptiles are a form of art, right? And the palette you choose to paint with is a ball python, a corn snake, a gray-banded king snake, whatever it is that you're interested in, and how that person evolves that art form, right? The way you looked at the hobby or the business was different that I looked at it when I started, and where my interest took me, but how that person interprets their passion, where the average reptile person, it grows into, well, not only am I interested about my pet ball python, but what's the weather like where these animals are from? What's going on over there? Okay, what's the wildlife like from that area? It's this multifaceted thing where, and maybe it changes over time where information is so readily available, but especially early on, because information was hard to come by, it leads you to learn about everything that you can to try to apply back to what the thing is that you're passionate about. And I think that is unique within the reptile hobby.
Right. Do you feel like more breeders could, because a lot of people that are coming into the industry now, in my opinion, quite a few of them, they don't herp, they don't like the natural side of it. I always tell people, you'll learn a lot about reptiles. You'll learn a lot about how you keep reptiles by herping. You learn a lot from their behavior, of what they look like in the wild, what they're doing in the wild, where you find them, how you find them, and all that, and just really get an appreciation for them.
Do I think that's good?
Do you think like that a lot of people are missing out on that?
Yeah, I do, but that's the thing. I mean, it's the same it's just the same idea with ball pythons, right? It's the same thing that I apologize for listeners, because I just talked about this yesterday to me, what will be 2 weeks and 6 months down the line for when this actually comes out. But just yesterday, I was talking about Steve Irwin, and kind of just was like, well, what's your take on this? And we kind of got to talk about it because, right, as an adult going back and very early on, looking at what what was being portrayed on TV, I was like, well, this isn't really responsible. I didn't really find this animal, and I started to kind of feel jaded in what I thought I was seeing, right?
Right.
And then you see a guy like Mark O'Shea where they don't always find the animal, and everything is very respectful, is the best way to explain it, in the handling of the animal and the explaining of what's going on, that I relate with that guy. And I start to feel some resentment towards what I'm seeing, and why is this guy the guy that's getting all the popularity? But that guy saved more snakes than I will ever in my life,
Right.
right? In a
Right.
way that I'm not that person. That's not who I am. That's not my character. And so it's not in my nature to go out and act that way, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. And again, that guy has done more than I've ever done. And so my interest in the hobby is field herping and the natural state of these animals and what's going on. And I keep animals as well. And but that's my job. That when I run into someone that only has a pet this or a pet that, and that's still good to me. I would rather there be more of those people that just have the pet ball python, just have
Right.
the pet. That's better for reptiles everywhere.
Right.
And that's my job in that moment, to share my passion and what I think is interesting, and that will get that person interested in that side of it. And so, do I think that it's better for people to do that? I do. Within my own collection, when you start to go out and you're trying to find these animals and understand why you're seeing them this day and not the first day, and you're sticking your hand in the for me, a rock cut, and feeling what it feels like in there, and what does the sand feel like, and then applying that to the animals that I'm keeping. It's that's what's cool about the hobby, is because it ends up being this multifaceted thing where your interest is going to drag you in this, where there's some guys that are just into field herping, no interest in keeping. Their interest and what they've focused on in their life is different than what I've focused on, and different from what you've focused on. But
Right.
your interest was this, and it turned into this thing. That's so cool. But I think there is value for sure in field herping.
Yeah, the whole Steve Irwin thing, it at first when I found out, as an adult, because I have Steve Irwin signed memorabilia hung up all around my house. He was my hero growing up. Watching this guy's passion about conservation and about reptiles, he even said it. He's only on TV and doing all of this so he can raise as much money as possible for conservation. He's like, he says, I don't even care whose money it comes from, as long as we can use this money for conservation. And watching that is like infectious almost, man. His energy. And then as an adult to find out, oh, a lot of this stuff was staged, obviously, and we know it's staged now because I've been out herping for 6-7 hours and found one ringneck before. So we know that you don't always just find your target species. And now talking to some of these old school herpers that were there in person helping Steve spot these animals for footage. But could you imagine watching an actual episode of Crocodile Hunter and he doesn't find anything? How boring would that be? Right. So I understand it's for content. He has to catch it, blah, blah, blah. He has to be able to educate us on what to do. And yes, was it irresponsible of him to jump on every crocodile and grab every snake that he saw? Sure. But then he inspired a full generation or two of herpers or reptile lovers and educated the masses. Don't kill every snake you see. These guys are intelligent animals. And it just that viral scene of him getting bitten in the neck by that snake and just didn't even flinch. And, just be like, hey, he's biting me right in the neck. But you notice I'm not doing anything. It's not hurting me. It's not hurting the snake. It just happens. And, yeah, I think people can learn a lot from that. Obviously, Steve was taken from us a little early there, but I just feel like field herping itself, if you can learn to enjoy nature and enjoy the species that we keep in captivity, but now just to see them in the wilds and learn from them. A lot of people ask me all the time, why do you guys spend thousands of dollars on these trips and you fly to this country and this country and this area just to herp and take pictures. And I'm like, yeah, that literally is the experience. We don't bag stuff and ship them back or anything. And we don't sell any of this stuff. We literally just go out there and appreciate them. And I think overall, it makes me a better keeper at the end of the day, because I can learn about these guys and their behaviors. I know why this female is acting this way. Why is this animal acting like this time of year? And stuff like that. Maybe this year's dry. Maybe I need to try something a little bit different. And I think overall, it made me a better keeper and breeder.
Yes, sir. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, this is one of those things where I'm going to go back through and edit this and go, damn, I should have said this and I should have said that, right? So many good points are being made here in your synopsis of the situation. I agree, and and so getting back to you and your adventure, field herping is obviously a passion of yours. What have some of your trips been? Where have you been?
So far, I've been to the herping capital of the world, Costa Rica, and we're actually going back in May. Me and the boys are going to go back in May and try to knock out the rest of the list of the species we haven't found. I've done Mexico, I've done Japan, Vietnam, and a good bit of the U.S. and Puerto Rico. Um, there wasn't really much to find in the Dominican, or I didn't find much in the Dominican and Jamaica. But so far, my favorite places herping is it's got to be Costa Rica, man. The just the vast density of species, density of animals. Like we found like 15 snakes in like 2 hours, which is really really good. For anyone that's herping, to find 15 snakes in 2 hours is just really amazing. Um, and finding multiple species. We found three different colors of eyelash vipers. And finding just stuff we've never seen before. This is what I like traveling to herp. I've herped Georgia so much, I've pretty much found every single species that's here, other than one. So I've actually never found a coral, and I've never found a mud snake. The two snake people see all the time, I've never found them. But I did Japan. I really enjoyed Japan. That one was just one where I studied the online sheets and kind of just winged it. We didn't have any pins. We didn't have a guide. I kind of just rented a car and drove out at night into the Yambaru forest, and just me and my wife. And she actually spotted both of the habus we found during the trip. The first one being a golden habu, a 5-footer. And then the second one, I was actually very preoccupied taking a gajillion pictures of a crocodile newt that I found on the road. And she was like, hey, I think I have a snake over here. And I just wandered over there and I'm like, holy crap, she just found a hime habu. But yeah, Japan was been got to be one of those top spots. And again, there's so many spots I haven't been to on the bucket list. Obviously, Indonesia, Australia, Africa, anywhere in Africa, Madagascar, um, Thailand. There's so many spots, and I'm just gonna try to hit one new spot every year.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. Have you ever herped Texas?
Yeah, we've done Texas 3 times. I did. We flew into Amarillo, and then drove towards. I have a buddy here that his family owns a ranch there, and I loved herping Texas because the heat that people describe is not. When we went out there, I actually enjoyed it. It was like really dry, but it's
Yeah.
windy. And we found the most random stuff, man. We found all the rattlesnakes in one day, bull snakes. We found whips. We found coach whips. We found all the kings. I found a baby deer, some vultures. We found the most random stuff, baby vultures. Yeah, it was like the most random stuff. And it was just a great trip overall. I really do enjoy herping Texas.
Excellent, excellent. And you're saying did you find an alterna?
No. So, oh God, I pull up a list. I have so many. Let me
Not to put you on the spot, but I mean, the gray banded king snake common.
Let me look here. I don't think we found that's. I think that's one of the king snakes I haven't found. There's 3 king snakes I haven't found. Let me see. So gray bands is on the list that I haven't found, and then I have not found the pyro king, and then I have not found the. Is it what's one of these variable kings? I'm missing a few kings on my list. I have quite a few that I've found. Yeah, so I'm missing gray bands. I'm missing the pyros or Arizona Mountain Kings. Um, yeah, missing quite just a few. And I spent a whole week in Arizona, and we went up to the mountains looking specifically for this mountain king, and we found everything but that snake.
Yeah.
It just happens like that. You set that target. Once you set a target species, that's going to be the one that you never see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a video game, right? Where it took me 10 years to find my first alternate, and now I found quite a few, but it took 10 years. And
Oh,
it's like
I've
an
been
unlocking in
herping.
a video game.
Yeah, I've been herping Georgia for 20 years, and I found my first hognose last year.
Yeah. But what a cool feeling. And to me, I mean, I would rather it had been that way, where when the experience, it's what again is such a cool thing about reptiles is it's so hard as you get older. It's not so hard. I don't know if that's the way to describe it, but it's kind of a bummer as you get older, and Christmases and birthdays and the little little happy spurts of whatever, they kind of disappear over time, and those are hard to recreate, right? Where it's like, what gift can someone get you that is going to give you that rush of being a little kid and opening up the whatever gift it was? You can't really recreate that as an adult
Right.
in that form, but you can with field herping, and you can with breeding reptiles, where you have the vision, you pair the animals, but you still don't know what chance you got a 1 in 32 of hitting that animal,
Right.
and you go, is it going to happen this year or not? I don't know. And then you that egg cracks, or you cut it and you go, holy shit, there it is.
I tell my wife all the time, I would be the richest person in the world if I could bottle up how I was feeling when I flipped this rock and found this hog nose, because this hog nose has been on my list for so long. And me and my buddy Matt Bowers set out that day. We're like, all right, we're gonna go to this spot because specifically, this is where we've seen pins for hog noses. It's in the sandbar of like Middle Georgia. So it's like this sandbar that goes through Middle Georgia. And so we drove an hour and a half down there. We cruised for hours. We flipped thousands of things. Abandoned houses. We've hit all these other spots. And right when we're about to quit, and I've already told him, I was like, it'll be cooler if we flip the hog nose than to cruise a hog nose. And sure enough, man, right when we're about to quit, it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We just kind of pulled over to the side and flipped some rocks on the side of the road. And when I flipped that hog nose, if I could just bottle up that feeling and sell it, I would be the richest person in the world. Because I told her, like I just got her into herping a few years, like this last few years, and she's like, it's like a feeling like unlike anything else, like to flip your own, like flip a snake, or to walk up onto a snake. It's like, wow, this is what you've been looking for all freaking day, and it's just been sitting under the stupid log. And just that feeling right there, it makes it all worth it. And yeah, man, it's something else.
Yeah, if you could bottle that, you'd go to jail. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's a scheduled substance,
Yeah.
right? It is such a good feeling, and another great feeling is having a partner that's interested in it. It sounds very much so, like your wife is very supportive of you, and has an interest in field herping and getting out there. What's that like for you?
Yeah, so at first she didn't understand it. When I went with the boys, it was just always a boys trip. It was always a boys trip. And then after a while, I'm like, how come I don't just bring her along? But then, I'm like, she's gonna hate it. It's hot. It's boring. It's just hours of monotonous walking and being disappointed over and over and over. Sometimes you find that perfect rock, right? You know what I'm talking about. It's like that flat piece laying in the sun just right, and you're like, there's got to be something under here. Everything's right, and you flip it, and there's just like a pile of ants. Um, and I was like, why would I put her through that? And then one day she was like, hey, why don't I come with you? And I was like, on this hike? And she's like, yeah. And when she found her first snake, she was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. So I ended up taking her, the following year for her birthday, I took her to Europe, and we had a good time over there. So she ended up returning the favor by booking my first trip to Costa Rica, and she was like, "I have night herp like activities already set up for us." I contacted a herpetologist that's gonna be helping us, like field through this area and all this. I was like, "Wow, she went through everything." And when she found her first snakes, I feel like she's hooked. She's like the feeling of it. And now, in Japan, she's asking me like, "Oh, are we gonna herp at night, or what's the game plan?" But I also have to, as a husband, and knowing that this is not her thing, um, plan activities that are not herp related. I have to try my hardest to not turn every single one of our vacations into a herping trip.
Yeah.
And that is very difficult for me because I want every trip to be a herping trip. But I'm trying my best to be better at, okay, let's go do husband and wife things too. We can always, we can just take a walk without flipping everything we see, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how cool is that? Both sides, right? And that's what's so cool about it is that that mix of people there, right? We're having the focus to go, hey, right? We got to mix it up and do something different. Um, you end up enjoying that later on, right? In the future, you'll look back and go, that is the right decision to make. And and it adds another layer to it, that is what field herping is, right? It's the adventures and the randomness. If you just walked out there and you found the species you were looking for and went back like you were in a Walmart, it wouldn't be what it is.
Do you
But
feel like
it's
people think that's what herping is sometimes because of the videos on YouTube? They just
Yeah,
go out there and they're
probably.
gonna find what they're looking for every time because these
But
YouTubers.
I don't think it's just because of the videos either, dude. I think that it's just in general,
Yeah.
right? Where I hear stories of, I remember my buddy. He told me a story about when he was a young guy out field herping, my snake hunt partner, that they ran into this guy and he was asking him, how's it going, how's your trip going, whatever. And they said, oh yeah, it's going good. And the guy said, yeah, it's my first night out here. I only got one night. I'm going from point A to point B, but I thought I would come out here and I'd get a pair of Suboc and an Alterna and then
Mhm.
keep on
Mhm.
with my day. And my buddy
Mhm.
said, oh yeah, good luck. And chuckled to himself as the guy pittered on down the road going, you think you're going to find that and all that and when you can get lucky, it's
Yeah.
possible, but what are the chances? So, and that was well before the internet. I think that sometimes people just don't understand.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, I have a group of guys I herp with, and we, after a full weekend of herping, we come in, we herp, like, we fly somewhere, we're Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. After a full weekend, I can put together like a 2-minute clip of all the finds, right? Like 5-second clip here, 10-second clip there. And when I post it, a lot of people are like, man, we would love to come herp with you. Wow, you guys found so much. And I'm like, this is after 40 hours of herping. And we showed you 12 snakes. I don't think the general like people that haven't herped before can look at that and go, so you guys found a snake every like 2-3 hours? And I was like, yeah, that's kind of how herping is. You don't find a snake every 10 minutes. This is not it's not like going to a show. You might be cruising for 2 hours before you see the next alive thing on the road. You might flip 400 rocks before you find your first ringneck. And it's just like that some days, and then some days you're on fire. There are days, there has been moments where we flip 20 rocks and find 5 snakes. It's just some days are better than others, and that's why I don't take a lot of people herping with me. I just don't, 6 hours of riding in a car or flipping rocks, and you have 3 snakes to show for it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know about you, but maybe you relate with this where as time goes by, when you look back to the fondest memories are the ones that sucked the most in the moment. Where friends prove themselves to be real friends that really have your back, or the success after X amount of time grinding for this thing, or, you know, the terrible business deal at work that you had to make work and it finally works, it's like, oh, I did it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You know, like
You
things
know?
have to line up right. Like for herping, especially, like our best find ever as a group was an 18-foot Burmese python. It's 2021. We found 18-foot berm on the road, and the only reason, like, not only reason, but like how we found it was that we've been cruising for so long. We actually ran out of gas, and we like, look, we have to get back to town right now, or else we're gonna be stuck out here. So we're in the Everglades, and we have to go find a gas station. And literally on our way to the gas station, I told the boys, "Hey, slow down because the car behind us, we need them to slow down because if we see a snake on the road, they're gonna run it over." So we were brake checking them constantly, and because that puts us in this like perfect spot, and we are literally able to spot a 18-foot Burmese python on the road. We swerved around her, and because the guy was behind us, went just slow enough. By the time we stopped, his lights shined directly onto the snake. We were able to come out of the van and grab her, you know, and everything just has to line up right. And then we just had to road cruise for 3 hours without finding anything for the first 3 hours, you know, and it led to that moment. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, sometimes your fondest memories is literally after 3 hours of monotonous road cruising.
Yes, yeah, but the conversations you have in those moments with like-minded people, I guess everybody's different, but I know that anything that I think now about reptiles and has been ironed out in hundreds of hours of being in a car, with my herping partner and talking about the same damn thing over and over again, but talking about it like it's new every damn time.
Right.
To where by the end of it you go, I think this is how it goes. And that is, the surprise and the journey of herping where, as someone myself, I'm very focused on what's relatively small area when you look at the scale of the world, but I'm very confident in that area, and I feel like I can make my chances better of finding the thing I'm looking for, but still there's a randomness to it where if I didn't pull over to take a pee, or I didn't pull over because I was about to run out of gas, or
Right.
the jackass didn't, whatever it was, that there's still some part of chance,
Where
right?
do you
And
herping
every,
most?
huh?
Where are you at? Where are you herping most?
I'm in Texas, and
Okay.
so
Yeah.
West Texas, and a just focus on Alterna. I enjoy the hobby as a whole. I enjoy seeing everything, but I only care about finding Alterna.
I gotcha. So the rattlesnakes and the collared lizards, because you guys get beautiful collared lizards out there. We've found quite a few. Um, the bull snakes. You guys get a lot out there, huh?
Yes, yeah. I think that Texas is one of the best herping areas for the diversity you get to see within one state. While it's spread out, and the numbers that you can see, um, you know, it's to me it's the best. But I have a very limited knowledge of herping outside of the United States, so you know,
Oh, so
I'm a
you're
jackass.
used to herping the deserts, huh? So you always look down. When you the one big change that you're gonna see herping different environments is you're gonna have to look up sometimes. You're gonna have to look directly in front of you in a tree. You're gonna have to look in the waters. You know, in Texas, it doesn't seem like you guys have to basically just look down, right? Because you don't have many arboreal species.
Yeah, it depends on kind of what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And then also too, I think I know I have seen the picture of the blacktail 3 feet up in a tree, right,
Right,
looking
right,
for
right.
birds or doing whatever. So now I'm like, well, I want to see that.
Yeah.
So right, I try to look up, and then also too when you're looking for gray bands, you're walking a lot of cuts, right? And so it is more of a three-dimensional thing where you should definitely always be checking the ground in front of you for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
But it is a
You're
little bit
in
more of a,
rattlesnake country.
yeah, yeah. I've stepped on a rattlesnake before. That was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so cool. Well, enough about me. And so, as we start to wind down here and being respectful of your time, where do you see the hobby, where you got into it? And we've talked about this, but just because as a kind of as a summary, where do you see the hobby from when you started, and where do you see it going in the future?
So when I started, the industry wasn't, in my opinion, much of an industry. We didn't have these big, huge corporations that are dedicated to certain parts of the industry. And I think as we go on, there will be even more of that. There's going to be more professional companies. The breeders overall are becoming more professional, in my opinion. They have a face, they have an online presence. And I'll be honest, one of the biggest turnoffs of this industry when I first started was the amount of racism I faced, and the amount of ignorance that was in the industry. And luckily for us, now with social media, everyone, you can call anybody out. You can cancel people for being ignorant or racist. And I think that's a great part of it. And it's going to be more inclusive. This is becoming a worldwide thing. I'm able to visit other countries and visit herpers across the world, visit breeders across the world. I've been very fortunate. I went to Vietnam 2 years ago, and I met up with 20 ball python breeders in Vietnam. you know, and that's, thousands of miles away. And we're able to go and have a beer and talk about genetics of ball pythons. That would never have happened if I was doing anything else, but so I think this industry is going to continue to grow worldwide, and it's going to become more professional. I think our industry is going to grow in that sense, and it's going to be more widely accepted. Keeping a reptile is not as taboo as it is 20 years ago. So everyone now, when you mention you breed snakes, everyone, no matter where you're at, has a friend or a cousin or somebody that used to have a red-tailed boa or a ball python. No matter who I've talked to, I'll be like, oh yeah, like they'll be like, what do you do for a living? I was like, I breed ball pythons. They're like, oh, my roommate used to have one of those, or yeah, I have a cousin that kept those, and stuff like that. So I think it's becoming more acceptable. It's not as taboo as it was back in the day. You're not that weird kid anymore, not as much. And because of that, I think we're going to take a bigger market share of the pet trade as the dog world and cat world starts to shrink. I don't know if you're familiar, but millennials and younger generations are not wanting the responsibilities of buying a dog or a cat because first of all, the financial strain, and then the amount of time you have to commit to a dog or a cat is unlike our parents' generation. But so the dog and cat world is starting to shrivel up to some degree. They're starting to shrink a little bit as the reptile world starts to take a larger chunk of the market share. Reptile market share is very small. We're still like, I think, sub 6% of the pet trade. So I can see this our industry growing into the double digits of the market share, and that's going to really help overall, talking about not just from a money perspective, but what the money does is that it allows more people to put more money into research and into husbandry and coming up with new products like better light bulbs, better UV options, better calcium, better all those options. And then, more money that can go back towards conservation and protecting species that are endangered. Maybe protect breeding programs that can help these species that have already. You're talking about like the galops, and you're talking about the tree monitors and all the earless monitors, all these species that are threatened and endangered. We can dump money back into helping conservation, also not just the reptile industry itself.
Yes, sir. Yeah. No, and beautiful, and I think a great summary of the future, and something that I can agree with, that I see it going in a similar way. Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I feel like there's a million points we could continue on, and I hope to do this in the future again and check back and see where we are in another 5 years, and what's changed.
Okay, awesome. Share with me some of your herping finds.
Excellent. Yes, sir, I will.
Right.
Well, thank you for your time tonight.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Let me zoom out on you here. Okay, you got a message for the time capsule?
Yeah, and it's simply this. My prediction for you is that even though you'll forget all about this in some way consciously, next summer at about this time, you'll remember to return.